Good day and welcome everyone, Stuart here from Northern Bolts & Tool, and today we're looking at the Cordless Impact Wrench range from Ingco. So we've got the 400 Newton meter unit coming in at 1,069 Rand. We've got the 500 Newton meter unit only coming in at around 1,370 Rand. We've got this 850 Newton meter impact wrench, tool only obviously, coming in at 2,269 Rand. We've got the 1,350 Newton meter impact wrench unit only coming in at around 3,600 Rand plus minus, give or take. And finally, we've got this 1,750 Newton meter unit coming in at 2,799 Rand. I know what you're thinking. There's a big price difference between the 1,750 unit and the 1,350 unit. We have brought it to Ingco's attention. We suspect that there might be a pricing issue on Ingco's side, but we work out all our prices on the cost price that we get from Ingco. So if there's any saving to be had, we pass it straight on to our customers. So the price might change on this. We estimate that the price should be in the high 3,000 Rand range, plus minus somewhere on there, but not 100% sure on what it should be or could be from Ingco. So as it is right now, 2,800 Rand gets you this unit. If you do see it available on our site at that price, I suggest getting on there and buying it if it's something you're interested in, because the price could change at pretty much any moment. So with that, let's get into the unboxing and see how these units work. Alright guys, we've got all of the impact wrenches out of their boxes. Over here we've got our 400 Newton meter impact wrench coming in at 1.25 kilos. This one is the smallest one in the range, but it is a very, very similar size and physical size to the 500. You can see that there is a little bit of a size difference on the 500. It's a little bit longer, and that makes sense because it is a more powerful unit. This unit comes in at around 1.35 kilos. Moving up to the 850 Newton meter impact wrench. Now you can see it's a little bit of a step up. This is starting to get quite big and heavy, and this unit comes in at around 2 kilos. The 1,350 Newton meter impact wrench, this is where things get really big. You can see it's significantly larger than the 850 in comparison over there, but you can also see that it's gone now to 3/4 inch drive on the front. This unit is quite a bit heavier, coming in at 3.2 kilos. It really is a beast. And finally, the 1,750 Newton meter impact wrench. This is the largest unit in the range. It is very similar in size to the 1,350, not too much of a difference in size there, but there is a slight weight difference. This one coming in at 3.3 kilos, so 100 grams heavier. Not really sure exactly where that is, but if I were to guess, I'd say it's probably in the hammer and anvil, obviously to boost up to that torque figure. In terms of functionality, I'm just going to use this 1,350 Newton meter impact wrench as an example. They all work exactly the same. They've all got this little keypad here with a nut bust feature. You can see there's a little arrow there for loosening, and you've got high, medium and low setting for different torque settings, and it's the same for all of them, except for the fact, obviously, if you've got it on another unit, it's going to have a different torque setting because it is a smaller or larger machine. Over here we've got the forward and reverse button over here. All of these tools, the controls are identical, so quite nice and consistent. You know, if you've got one and you're used to it, if you move up or you change the tool, the controls are the same, so you won't need to get used to it or anything like that. You'll be able to just pick it up and get going with it. So with that, let's rig up our test bench and let's test out these tools to see what they're able to both fasten and loosen. For the testing, we're going to be using an 8 amp hour battery. The 8 amp hour battery is recommended on this big unit, but to remain consistent throughout our testing, we're going to use an 8 amp hour battery on all of the tools. So with that guys, let's get into the testing and see how they perform. Alright guys, we're done here. We've set up our rig over here. We're going to start off by doing the fastening test. We're going to fasten this nut for 10 seconds, and then we're going to try and break it loose with our torque wrench and see how much force it takes to loosen this nut. So that, let's get into the test. Alright, fastening test. Let's get going. Now it's time to loosen it and see how much force is on here. Okay, 150 Newton meters, easy. 200 Newton meters. That kind of moved a little bit, didn't it? Yeah, it's loose. Okay, so it did crack the torque wrench at 200 Newton meters of force, but as it clicked, I felt it move a little bit, so we're going to take it as 200 Newton meters on the nose exactly for fastening torque. Now let's have a look and see what the 500 Newton meter machine can do. Alright guys, time now for the 500 Newton meter impact wrench fastening test. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Now let's crack it free and see what we're able to get. Alright guys, testing at 150 Newton meters. Let's check it out. Easy. 200 Newton meters, let's go. 250 Newton meters. 300. And we came loose. So between 250 and 300 for the 500 in terms of fastening. Let's move on to the next test. Alright guys, I'm here with the 850 Newton meter unit. Let's see what it's able to achieve on fastening. Starting in 3, 2, 1. And it did feel a lot more powerful. Let's break it free and let's see what we're able to achieve. Okay, 450 Newton meters. No problem. 500 Newton meters. 550. And it finally broke loose. So between 500 and 550 Newton meters, that's a great result. Let's move on to the next tool. Alright guys, we're here with the 1350 Newton meter impact wrench. So we're going to start the test in 3, 2, 1. Now it's time to loosen and see what we're able to achieve. Alright guys, trying at 500 Newton meters. No problem there. 550 Newton meters. Okay, 600 Newton meters. And we broke free at between 550 and 600 Newton meters. Let's move on to the next test. Alright guys, we're here with the 1750 Newton meter impact wrench. Let's see what we're able to achieve with this unit. So starting the test in 3, 2, 1. Now it's time to break it free and see what we're able to achieve. All right, 600 Newton meters. No problem at all. 650 Newton meters. No problem there. Let's move on to 700. 700 Newton meters. And it broke free between 650 and 700 Newton meters. Let's move on to the loosening test. Alright guys, time for the loosening test. We've torqued this to 250 Newton meters of torque. We're going to give the machine 10 seconds to loosen it. If it's not able to do so, we'll count as a fail. Obviously, if it does, we'll move on and up. So, let's set up here. Okay, 3, 2, 1. So 250 Newton meters done. Let's move on to 300. Alright, we're up to 300. Let's see how we get on. 3, 2, 1. And just after 8 seconds was able to just about loosen the 300. I think if we make it to like 320, 330, I think we might not be able to loosen it. Let's move on to, let's go 330 and let's see how it does. Moving on to 330 Newton meters. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. And it continues to surprise. I think let's clap it on 400 and let's see what it does. Alright guys, so I've actually done 350 Newton meters here, not the 400 that I mentioned before. So I'm just going to try on 350 and see how it does. So let's get into it. 3, 2, 1. So it was not able to loosen on 350. I'm going to put it onto the nut bust feature, and let's see if we're able to do it then. So I'm going to do another 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. And it was able to do it with the nut bust feature. So that's quite cool. So let's move on to 400 Newton meters. Now for the 400 Newton meter test. 3, 2, 1. And it failed on 400 Newton meters. Now I just want to try and engage the nut bust feature and see if it does boost it at all. Ingco claims that it does a little bit, but I'm just going to do it for another 10 seconds and see. So 3, 2, 1. And I think 400 Newton meters is just a little bit too much. Let's move on to the 500. All right, starting off with the loosening test with the 500 Newton meter unit. We've torqued it to 300 Newton meters. Again, we're going to give it 10 seconds to loosen. 3, 2, 1. And that was pretty easy. Let's move on to 350. All right, 350 Newton meters. In 3, 2, 1. Yo, on the cusp. The 400 Newton meter definitely did that a little bit quicker, but let's move on to 400 and see what this machine does. All right, sorry guys, I did get a little bit ahead of myself right there. The 400 Newton meter machine wasn't able to loosen at 350 unless there was a nut bust. So if this machine does 400, it has beaten the 400. So 3, 2, 1. Wasn't able to do the 400. Let's put onto the nut bust mode and let's see if we get a different result. So 3, 2, 1. And we were able to loosen it with the nut bust feature. Let's move on to 450 Newton meters with the nut bust feature and let's see if it's able to loosen. All right guys, got it on nut bust. 450. Let's see how we get on. 3, 2, 1. Not able to undo on 450, but I was able to undo on 400. So let's move on to the next machine. Time now for 850 Newton meter machine. We've torqued this down to 600 Newton meters of torque. 3, 2, 1. Let's move on to 650 Newton meters. All right guys, moving on to 650 Newton meters. Let's see if we're able to loosen it. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Let's move on to 700 Newton meters. All right guys, 700 Newton meters. Starting in 3, 2, 1. And finally, at 700 Newton meters, we have tapped out. So I'm going to engage the nut bust feature, just retorque everything, nut bust, and let's see if it's able to do it on that setting. All right, 700 Newton meters on nut bust. Let's see if we're able to loosen it. Just not able to do it, so that's our peak. 650 to 700 Newton meters. Let's move on to the next test. All right guys, we've talked it down to 700 Newton meters of force. Let's see if we're able to break it free. So starting the test in 3, 2, 1. Super easy. I think we're probably going to max out what we're capable here. That was very easy. Let's go straight to 800 and see how it does. All right guys, we've now talked down to 800 Newton meters. This is unfortunately the maximum amount of torque we're able to torque this to reliably and able to measure. So we're also just going to time this one compared to the 1750 and then see which one is able to loosen this quicker. I'm pretty certain it will be able to loosen this nut. So let's see. We'll get our timer out, starting the test in 3, 2, 1. And that was super easy without even trying. So yeah, that's pretty much that for this one. Let's move on to the next tool. Alright guys, now time for the loosening test with the 1750 Newton meter impact wrench. We've gone straight to 800 Newton meters here. We know that it will loosen this, but the question is how fast will it be? So here goes, 3, 2, 1. And that was pretty quick. So let's look at the timer and let's make some comparisons. So guys, there you go, that's our testing done. As you can see on that last test, on the loosening test with these two units, the 1750 and 1350 units, the 1350 actually loosened that nut a little bit quicker than the largest unit, the 1750. But I do think that we weren't able to really get a proper estimate on what these are capable of on loosening torque, because they loosen that 800 Newton meter nut so easily. So I'm not really sure if you could take that result into consideration. We have tried to look at the data to try and get an estimate on where these would tap out in terms of loosening force, and it's kind of difficult to tell. You guys can try and see if you can figure it out and let us know in the comments down below. But if we were to take an estimate, we would say around 1200 Newton meters on the 1350 Newton machine, and maybe a little bit more, maybe 1314 Newton meters on this 1750 Newton meter machine. So they are incredibly powerful. Now, as you could see, starting at the bottom of the range, moving up, the machines did get more and more powerful throughout. So that's also a good thing to see. Our testing was nice and consistent, and I do trust the results that we saw. Now, talking about the results, I'm going to take the average. So if it broke free, let's say between 500 and 550, I'm going to say 525 is what it achieved. So that will just help us out here and make it a little bit easier to understand the results. Starting off at the 400 Newton meter machine, it fastened at 200 Newton meters and loosened at around 330, 340 Newton meters. So in terms of the recommendation for this unit, I would say if you're using anything M16 or below, this would be the unit to go for. As soon as it goes above M16, yes, you can still use it, but it might struggle to loosen those larger fasteners. And let's just be honest, a little bit of extra power goes a long way. In terms of the 500 Newton meter machine, this one fastened at 275 Newton meters and loosened at 375 on normal and 425 on nut bust mode. In terms of recommendation, this one M18 or lower on the 500 Newton meter machine. Of course, if you can again use it on larger fasteners, but it might struggle as the sizes get bigger to loosen. So I'm looking at loosening as opposed to fastening, because a lot of people use these tools mostly for loosening. And let's be honest, they're not exactly precision instruments, and fastening with these units isn't best practice because you do not have 100% precise control, and you could result in damaged threads or stripped threads, crossed threads as well. So definitely more for loosening rather than fastening. Moving on to the 850 Newton meter machine. This unit fastened at 525 Newton meters and broke free at 675 Newton meters in terms of loosening force. Now, what's interesting with all of these is that there's an exact 150 Newton meter difference between fastening and loosening on peak torques across these three units here. I don't think we can extrapolate them to these larger units because we achieved more than that on these with the 800 versus what they fastened with. So these are definitely outliers in terms of the data. So in terms of the recommendation on the 850 Newton meter machine, if you're using M20 around that size, this machine would be ideal for you. Now these two machines here, because we couldn't get an accurate test or gauge on the loosening force, I would say looking at M24 or larger would be ideal for these. Of course, if we could get a more accurate gauge, we'd be able to tell you more detail. But anything M24 or up, if you're looking at 1,200, 1,300 Newton meters, you're looking at around M30, M36, around that size. So, you know, they are capable of a lot, and you can really take them up and use them in those bigger sizes. So that, guys, I hope I've tried to make sense and clarify the range of impact wrenches as well as the recommendation. So look at what fasteners you're going to be using these things on, and then from there you'll be able to make a purchasing decision on which one would be best for you. So that, guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I certainly have enjoyed it. If you have, please hit that like button if you've not done so already, and subscribe. It really does help. Everything that you see here is available in store and online. So if you would like to make a purchase, head through to our online store or come into our physical store to make the purchase. And we'll link everything down below for you guys to check out. So guys, thank you very, very much for watching. I'll catch you again next week. Thank you very much.